Chapter 1. The night everything ended. The Grand Regency Ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen stars above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the skyline of New York stretching endlessly into the darkness. While the most influential alphas, omegas, and business leaders in the country gathered to celebrate another record-breaking year for Blackwood Global Holdings. Noah Carter stood near the edge of the room, holding a glass of sparkling water he had barely touched. He had never enjoyed events like this. The expensive suits, the practiced smiles, the endless conversations about acquisitions and profits all felt distant from the life he truly loved. As an illustrator, Noah preferred quiet mornings, paint-stained fingers, and the gentle comfort of creating stories for children. Yet tonight, like so many nights before, he was there because of Ethan Blackwood. Ethan stood at the center of attention exactly where everyone expected him to be. Tall, composed, and impossibly confident. He commanded every conversation without appearing to try. As the chief executive officer of one of the largest companies in the country, he had become the kind of alpha people admired from afar and feared up close. Noah watched him from across the room and felt the familiar ache he had spent years pretending did not exist. 3 years of marriage should have made him feel closer to Ethan. Instead, it often felt as though they lived on opposite sides of an invisible wall. They shared a home, they shared a name, but somewhere along the way, they had stopped sharing their hearts. A burst of laughter erupted from the group surrounding Ethan. Noah looked up instinctively. One of Ethan's business partners was speaking loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear. "Come on, Ethan," the alpha joked. "You could have married anyone. Tell us honestly, what made you choose the quiet artist?" More laughter followed. Noah lowered his gaze. He had heard similar comments before. People always assumed he did not belong in Ethan's world. Usually Ethan ignored them. Usually. Tonight was different. Ethan swirled the amber liquid in his glass and smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was not even angry. It was worse. It was careless. The kind of smile people wore when they did not realize they were about to break something fragile. Then he laughed. "Noah," Ethan said casually. "He is easy to replace." The words landed with surprising clarity despite the music and conversation surrounding them. For a moment, Noah thought he had misunderstood. But then more laughter filled the room. Several guests nodded as if the statement were harmless. As if it were normal. As if the person being discussed was not standing only a few yards away. Ethan never looked toward him. He never noticed the silence that settled inside Noah's chest. He never saw the way Noah's fingers tightened around the glass. He never saw the final piece of hope disappear from Noah's eyes. Because the truth was that Noah had spent years convincing himself things would improve. Years believing Ethan was simply busy, stressed, distracted. Years explaining away every forgotten anniversary, every canceled dinner, every lonely evening spent waiting beside a cold fireplace. But standing there beneath the chandeliers, listening to the man he loved describe him as replaceable, Noah finally understood something. The marriage had not ended tonight. It had ended little by little over countless silent days. Tonight was simply the moment he stopped pretending otherwise. Noah quietly placed his untouched drink on a passing tray. No dramatic confrontation followed. No tears. No argument. No scene. He simply turned away from the celebration and walked toward the exit. Behind him, the laughter continued. Ahead of him, the city lights stretched into the darkness like an unfamiliar road. For the first time in years, Noah did not know where he was going. But he knew exactly what he was leaving behind. The city felt different after midnight. The noise had faded. The endless stream of headlights had thinned into scattered streaks of light across wet streets. Noah Carter sat alone in the back of a rideshare vehicle, watching familiar buildings disappear behind him one by one. His phone remained silent in his coat pocket. Part of him had expected it to ring. Not because Ethan would be worried, but because Ethan always noticed when something disrupted his routine. Yet the screen remained dark. No messages, no calls, no questions. Noah stared out the window and felt a strange calm settle over him. 3 years earlier, leaving would have terrified him. Tonight, it felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. The Blackwood estate stood on the northern edge of the city, hidden behind iron gates and carefully landscaped gardens. To most people, it looked like a dream. To Noah, it had become a museum filled with memories nobody visited anymore. When he stepped through the front door shortly after midnight, the house was silent. Ethan would not return until much later. Corporate celebrations always lasted long into the night. Noah climbed the staircase slowly, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Their bedroom looked exactly as it had that morning. Ethan's jacket rested on a chair. A business report sat open on the desk. Everything appeared normal. Yet Noah felt as though he were looking at someone else's life. He opened the closet and removed a single suitcase. Not the expensive luggage they used for public appearances. Just an old navy blue suitcase he had owned before the marriage. He packed carefully. A few sweaters, sketchbooks, art supplies, family photographs. Nothing more. Most of the luxury items remained exactly where they were. They had never truly belonged to him anyway. Near the back of the closet sat a small locked box. Noah hesitated before retrieving it. Inside were documents he had spent years protecting. Medical reports, legal agreements, financial records, papers connected to choices Ethan knew nothing about. Choices Noah had never intended to reveal. For a long moment he held the folder against his chest. Then he placed it carefully inside the suitcase. Before dawn, he walked through every room one final time. The library where he used to wait for Ethan to come home. The kitchen where dinners often grew cold. The sunroom where he had painted during lonely afternoons. He was not searching for reasons to stay. He was saying goodbye to the person he used to be. In the master bedroom, Noah removed his wedding ring. The gold band caught the faint light from the city beyond the windows. 3 years earlier, placing it on his finger had felt like the beginning of a beautiful future. Now it felt like the closing line of a chapter that had already ended. He set the ring beside Ethan's unopened report on the desk. No letter accompanied it. No accusation. No explanation. By the time the first pale colors of sunrise appeared beyond the horizon, Noah Carter was gone. Miles away from the estate, he boarded an early morning train heading south. As the city slowly disappeared behind him, he finally removed his phone, powered it off, and slipped it into his bag. Ahead of him waited uncertainty. Behind him remained a life he could no longer carry. And hidden among the papers inside his suitcase was a truth capable of changing everything Ethan Blackwood thought he knew. 3 days passed before Ethan Blackwood noticed anything was wrong. At first, Noah's absence barely registered against the chaos of his schedule. Meetings filled his mornings. Investor calls consumed his afternoons. By the time he returned to the estate each night, exhaustion dulled whatever questions might have surfaced. He assumed Noah was visiting friends, perhaps working on a project somewhere in the city. They had spent enough time apart over the years that a few days seemed unremarkable. On the fourth morning, however, something felt different. The house was too quiet. No scent of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. No sketchbooks lay scattered across the sunroom table. Even the staff moved through the estate with unusual caution. Ethan sat at the dining table scrolling through messages while absent-mindedly waiting for breakfast. It was only when his house manager approached with visible hesitation that he finally looked up. "Sir," the older beta said carefully. "There is something you should know." Ethan frowned. "What is it?" The man swallowed. "Mr. Carter has not been home for several days." Ethan stared at him. "And we believe he left permanently." A sharp irritation surfaced immediately. Permanently? The word sounded ridiculous. Noah was emotional sometimes, sensitive. If he had gone somewhere to clear his head, he would return eventually. Ethan dismissed the concern and continued with his day. Yet as the hours passed, small details began to accumulate. Noah's phone went directly to voicemail. Messages remained unread. His favorite art studio reported that he had not visited. Friends had not heard from him either. By the end of the week, Annoyance had slowly transformed into confusion. One evening, Ethan finally entered their bedroom with the specific intention of finding answers. The room looked untouched. Everything remained neat and orderly. Then he noticed the empty space in the closet. Several shelves had been cleared. Personal items were missing. The old navy blue suitcase Noah used for travel was gone. A strange feeling settled in Ethan's chest. Not fear. Not yet. Something closer to disbelief. His gaze moved toward the desk. There, beside an unopened business report, rested a simple gold wedding ring. Ethan stopped breathing for a moment. Noah had left it behind. He picked it up slowly, turning the band between his fingers. No note accompanied it. No explanation. Nothing. The silence somehow felt worse than anger would have. Over the following days, Ethan began discovering things he had never bothered to notice before. Noah's art supplies had disappeared. His personal computer was gone. Several framed photographs had been removed from the walls. It was not a temporary departure. It had been planned carefully, methodically, as though Noah had spent a long time preparing for this moment. Then another discovery arrived. One of Ethan's attorneys requested an urgent meeting. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes, but it left Ethan staring across his office in stunned silence. "There must be a mistake," Ethan said. The attorney shook his head. "There is no mistake." Several legal documents rested on the conference table. Every signature belonged to Noah. Every filing had been completed weeks earlier. Ethan studied the numbers again, then again, and again. It made no sense. Throughout their marriage, Ethan had assumed Noah depended on him financially. Everyone assumed that. Yet the documents revealed something entirely different. Hidden among various investments was a company valued at several $1,000,000. The company belonged solely to Noah, not Ethan. Not Blackwood Global. Noah. More shocking still, Noah had voluntarily transferred ownership away before disappearing. Ethan leaned back in his chair, unable to process what he was seeing. For the first time since Noah had left, a disturbing question entered his mind. How much of Noah's life had existed beyond his notice? And how many answers had just boarded a train and vanished before sunrise? Chapter 2. The Man He Never Saw. 2 weeks after Noah's disappearance, Ethan Blackwood found himself sitting alone in an office he had once considered the center of his world. The panoramic windows overlooked Manhattan, but the view no longer held his attention. His thoughts kept returning to the same question. Who had Noah Carter really been? The answer should have been simple. They had been married for 3 years. Yet every new discovery made Ethan realize how little he actually knew. The company Noah had quietly built remained at the center of his confusion. According to the records, it had started nearly 5 years earlier, before their wedding. What shocked Ethan most was not its value. It was the fact that Noah had never mentioned it. Not once. Ethan instructed his legal team to gather everything available. Within days, reports began arriving. The company operated under a private holding structure. It invested in small businesses, independent publishing houses, educational technology programs, and community arts projects. Nothing flashy. Nothing designed to attract attention. Every decision reflected Noah's personality. Quiet, careful, purposeful. Ethan flipped through page after page late into the evening. The more he read, the more unsettled he became. This was not the profile of someone dependent on a wealthy spouse. Noah had possessed his own resources, his own influence, and his own network. He simply never spoke about them. One particular report caught Ethan's attention. 5 years earlier, Blackwood Global had suffered a severe financial crisis following a disastrous acquisition. Ethan remembered those months vividly. Investors fled. Stock prices collapsed. Industry analysts predicted failure. He had worked nearly every hour of every day trying to keep the company alive. Somehow, a private investment group had stepped forward at exactly the right moment. The funding had stabilized operations and prevented disaster. Ethan remembered feeling grateful, but the investors had remained anonymous through layers of legal protection. Back then, he had been too busy surviving to question it. Now, Reading the old documents again, something felt strange. The anonymous investment group appeared repeatedly alongside entities connected to Noah's company. Ethan leaned forward. His pulse quickened. The connection was indirect but impossible to ignore. Several holding companies led back to the same network. The same signatures. The same legal representatives. The same financial structures Noah had used for years. Ethan immediately called his attorney. "I need confirmation," he said. "Today." The investigation moved quickly. By the following afternoon, the answer arrived. Ethan sat motionless as the attorney placed a final report on his desk. "The evidence is conclusive," the attorney said quietly. "The capital that saved Blackwood Global during the crisis originated from assets controlled by Mr. Carter." Ethan stared at him. "No. I verified it personally." Silence filled the office. 5 years ago, Ethan had believed he saved his company through determination and strategy. For years, he had accepted congratulations from business magazines and industry leaders. Yet, according to the documents spread before him, the company might not have survived without Noah's intervention. Noah had stepped forward when everyone else walked away. Noah had risked his own resources. Noah had protected Ethan's future long before they exchanged wedding vows. And he had never asked for recognition. Ethan pushed away from the desk and walked toward the window. Below, thousands of people moved through the city unaware that his understanding of the past had just changed forever. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Noah sitting quietly beside him during those difficult years. Bringing coffee during late nights. Offering encouragement when Ethan barely listened. Ethan had always assumed Noah was supporting him emotionally. He never imagined Noah had been supporting him in ways far greater than words. For the first time since Noah left, guilt began replacing confusion. Not because Noah had hidden the truth, but because Ethan had never cared enough to ask the questions that might have revealed it. The report remained open on Ethan Blackwood's desk long after midnight. He had read the same pages repeatedly, hoping he had misunderstood something. Yet every document led to the same conclusion. Noah Carter had quietly saved Blackwood Global years ago, and Ethan had never known. Worse, Ethan had never even suspected it. The realization followed him everywhere over the next several days. During board meetings, he found himself staring at presentations without hearing a single word. During investor calls, he caught himself remembering conversations that once seemed insignificant. Tiny moments now carried entirely different meanings. One memory returned more often than the others. 5 years earlier, during the height of the financial crisis, Ethan had spent nearly every evening inside the office. He remembered one particular night when the pressure had become almost unbearable. Investors were abandoning the company. Employees feared layoffs. Reporters predicted collapse. Ethan had remained alone in a conference room long after everyone else left. Around midnight, Noah had appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. At the time, they were only dating. Ethan remembered being irritated by the interruption. He had barely looked up from the financial reports scattered across the table. Noah had simply placed the coffee beside him and sat quietly nearby. "You should go home," Ethan had said. "This doesn't concern you." Noah had smiled softly. "Maybe not, but you concern me." Back then, Ethan interpreted the comment as affection. Looking back now, he wondered how much Noah already knew. Another memory surfaced. A few weeks after the crisis ended, Ethan had asked Noah if he wanted anything special for his birthday. A car, a vacation, jewelry, anything. Noah had laughed and declined every offer. "I already have enough," he had said. Ethan remembered thinking Noah was being modest. Now he understood that Noah truly meant it. The more Ethan reflected on the past, the more painful the pattern became. Noah had never asked for credit, never demanded attention, never used his sacrifices as leverage. He had simply given, again and again. Meanwhile, Ethan had accepted those gifts without ever recognizing them. The breakthrough came when Ethan's investigative team uncovered another layer of the story. The anonymous investment had not been a simple transfer of money. Noah had liquidated a significant portion of his personal assets to create it. Several projects he cared deeply about had been sold. Long-term investments had been abandoned. Opportunities for his own future had disappeared. Not because anyone forced him, because he wanted Ethan's company to survive. Ethan sat alone in his office after receiving the report. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass walls, but he barely noticed them. For years, he had believed Noah was standing beside him while he built his success. The truth was far more uncomfortable. Noah had surrendered pieces of his own future to protect Ethan's. And Ethan's reward for that loyalty had been neglect, distance, and finally a cruel joke at a crowded party. For the first time, Ethan found himself asking a question that no financial report could answer. If Noah had loved him enough to sacrifice so much, what kind of person had Ethan become to make Noah finally walk away? The answer arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Ethan Blackwood had spent nearly a month chasing pieces of Noah's life, convinced that every discovery would finally explain why his husband had disappeared without a word. Instead, each answer only created more questions. He was reviewing another stack of documents when his assistant informed him that an attorney from a private medical trust had requested a meeting. The name meant nothing to Ethan. At first, he almost declined. Then he noticed Noah's name attached to the request. 20 minutes later, a middle-aged attorney sat across from him in silence. A thick folder rested on the conference table between them. Mr. Carter authorized the release of these records under very specific circumstances, the attorney explained. Only if he could not be contacted for more than 30 days. Ethan's stomach tightened. What records? The attorney slid the folder forward. Medical records. For a moment, neither man spoke. Ethan opened the file. The first page contained diagnostic reports from nearly 2 years earlier. The second page contained specialist evaluations. The third contained treatment recommendations. By the fourth page, Ethan could barely focus on the words. Noah had been diagnosed with a hereditary cardiac condition, a rare disorder that gradually weakened the heart over time. The reports described years of monitoring, consultations, and ongoing evaluations. Ethan stared at the dates. 2 years. Noah had known for 2 years. The room suddenly felt smaller. There has to be some mistake, Ethan said quietly. He never told me. The attorney's expression remained sympathetic. According to his physicians, he chose not to share the diagnosis with many people. Ethan continued reading. Every page felt heavier than the last. There were treatment plans, follow-up appointments, notes discussing future risks. Yet nowhere did Noah describe himself as a victim. The reports revealed the same thing everyone else seemed to know except Ethan. Noah had approached the situation calmly, rationally, privately. Then Ethan reached the final section. A handwritten statement. Noah's statement. His fingers tightened around the paper as he read. If my condition progresses, I do not want Ethan Blackwood carrying the burden of watching it happen. He has already given enough years to responsibilities that were never truly his choice. I want him to have the freedom to build a future untouched by this. Ethan read the words again, then again. The irony was unbearable. Noah had believed he was protecting him, even after years of neglect, even after feeling alone, even after hearing those cruel words at the party. Noah's final instinct had still been to shield Ethan from pain. Ethan lowered the paper slowly. For weeks, he had assumed Noah left because he was angry, because he was hurt, because he no longer cared. Now he understood something far more devastating. Noah had not left to punish him. Noah had left because he loved him enough to disappear. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan felt genuine fear. Not fear of losing his marriage. Fear that he might already be too late to find the man who had spent years saving everyone except himself. Chapter 3. The Girl by the Sea. Ethan Blackwood stopped waiting for answers to come to him. The moment he finished reading Noah's medical records, something changed inside him. For weeks, he had remained trapped in offices, conference rooms, and investigations. He had treated Noah's disappearance like a business problem waiting to be solved. Now it felt personal, urgent, human. Noah was out there somewhere, carrying a burden alone, just as he had carried so many others throughout his life. Ethan could not ignore that reality any longer. His private investigators expanded their search across the country. They followed financial records, property transfers, and scattered traces left behind during Noah's departure. Most leads ended in disappointment. A hotel reservation canceled before arrival. An apartment leased under a temporary name. Small clues that vanished almost as quickly as they appeared. Then, nearly 6 weeks after Noah left, a breakthrough finally arrived. The lead investigator entered Ethan's office carrying a photograph. "We found him," he said quietly. Ethan rose from his chair so quickly that it nearly toppled backward. The photograph showed a small coastal town on the Oregon shoreline. Gray skies stretched above the Pacific Ocean while rows of weathered buildings overlooked the harbor. In the center of the image stood Noah. He looked thinner than Ethan remembered, but he was smiling. It was the first genuine smile Ethan had seen from him in years. For several seconds, Ethan could not speak. Then he noticed someone standing beside Noah. A young girl. She appeared to be around 7 years old, with dark curls dancing in the ocean breeze. Noah was holding her hand as they crossed a boardwalk overlooking the water. Another photograph showed them eating ice cream near the marina. A third captured them sitting together on a wooden bench watching boats return to shore. Ethan stared at the images in confusion. The child appeared comfortable around Noah. Familiar. Close. "Who is she?" Ethan asked. The investigator shook his head. "We do not know yet." Ethan continued studying the photographs. A strange feeling settled over him. Noah had always loved children. During their marriage, he often volunteered at literacy programs and community art workshops. Yet something about these images felt different. More personal. More permanent. The girl was not behaving like someone attending a public event. She looked like someone who trusted Noah completely. Someone who expected him to be there every day. Questions flooded Ethan's mind. Had Noah been hiding another part of his life all along? Was the child a relative? A family friend? Someone he was helping? Or was there an explanation Ethan had not even considered? For the first time since Noah vanished, uncertainty mixed with jealousy. Not romantic jealousy. Something deeper. The painful realization that Noah seemed capable of building an entire life beyond Ethan's reach. A life filled with purpose, kindness, and connection. Everything Ethan now realized he had failed to protect. That evening, Ethan booked the earliest flight available to Oregon. He could no longer rely on reports and photographs. He needed to see Noah himself. Yet as he packed for the trip, his eyes returned once more to the picture of Noah and the little girl standing beside the ocean. He still did not know her name. He did not know why she mattered. But somehow, he felt certain she held the key to the next chapter of Noah's story. The Oregon coast greeted Ethan Blackwood with cold ocean winds and a sky covered in silver clouds. The small harbor town looked nothing like New York. There were no towering skyscrapers, no endless traffic, no boardrooms filled with executives. Everything moved more slowly here. People greeted one another by name. Fishing boats drifted across calm water. Children rode bicycles along quiet streets. Felt like a different world. And somehow Noah seemed to belong to it. Ethan found him 2 days after arriving. Not through investigators. Not through surveillance. Pure chance led him to a small bookstore near the marina. Through the front window, he saw Noah sitting at a table covered with art supplies. Several children surrounded him, laughing as he helped them paint colorful sea creatures. For a moment, Ethan simply stood outside and watched. Noah looked healthier than he had expected. Not completely well, but lighter, more at peace. Then Ethan noticed the little girl from the photographs sitting beside him. She proudly held up a drawing, and Noah smiled with obvious affection. The sight stirred old questions all over again. Ethan waited until the event ended before approaching. Noah froze when he saw him. Surprise flashed across his face, followed by something quieter. Not anger, not resentment, just sadness. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then the little girl tugged gently on Noah's sleeve. "Is he your friend?" she asked. Noah glanced toward Ethan before offering a small smile. Something like that. The child seemed satisfied with the answer and wandered toward a nearby shelf. Ethan looked between them. Who is she? Noah's expression softened immediately. Her name is Lily. Ethan waited. Noah remained silent. Finally, he continued. She is the daughter of the woman who donated her heart after an accident several years ago. Ethan frowned in confusion. Noah lowered his eyes. The transplant that saved my life. The word struck Ethan harder than he expected. Transplant. Noah nodded. My condition became worse much faster than the doctors predicted. About a year before I left New York, I underwent surgery. Ethan stared at him. Another truth. Another chapter of Noah's life he had never known existed. Noah glanced toward Lily, who was now carefully arranging books on a display shelf. Her mother was an elementary school teacher. She loved art, reading, and helping people. Before she passed away, she had registered as an organ donor. Her decision gave me more time. Ethan followed Noah's gaze. Understanding slowly replaced confusion. You stayed because of Lily. Noah nodded. Her father works offshore for long periods. After everything happened, I promised I would help whenever I could. Felt like honoring someone who changed my life. Ethan looked at the child again. The mystery he had imagined was gone. The truth was far simpler and far more beautiful. Lily was not Noah's secret. She was another example of the quiet promises Noah always kept. The conversation in the bookstore ended long after the sun disappeared beyond the Pacific Ocean. For the first time in years, Ethan Blackwood and Noah Carter sat across from one another without schedules, obligations, or expectations standing between them. There were no board meetings waiting for Ethan. No excuses left to hide behind. Only truth. Ethan listened as Noah spoke about the months after leaving New York, about the recovery process, the quiet coastal town, and the simple life he had built for himself. When Noah finished, silence settled between them. Ethan looked down at his hands before finally speaking. I spent weeks trying to understand why you left. Noah gave a small, sad smile. And now, Ethan met his eyes. Now I am wondering why you stayed as long as you did. The honesty in the answer caught Noah off guard. Ethan took a slow breath. I cannot change what happened. I cannot take back the things I failed to see. But I need you to know that losing you made me realize something. Noah remained quiet. The company was never the greatest thing I built. You were. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Noah looked toward the harbor lights outside the window. I loved you for a very long time, Ethan. I know. And eventually I became tired of being invisible. Ethan lowered his head. I know that too. The following weeks passed differently than either of them expected. Ethan did not pressure Noah to return to New York. He did not ask for immediate forgiveness. Instead, he stayed in Oregon. He rented a small house near the marina. He attended community events. He volunteered at the children's art programs Noah supported. For the first time in his adult life, he learned how to be present instead of simply successful. Slowly, trust began to return. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But through hundreds of small moments. Morning coffee shared on a porch overlooking the ocean. Walks along the shoreline. Honest conversations that should have happened years earlier. 1 year later, Ethan stood beside Noah on the same boardwalk where the investigators had first photographed him. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Lily was racing down the pier with several friends, laughing as seabirds circled overhead. Noah leaned against the railing and smiled. Do you ever miss New York? Ethan glanced toward him. Not really. Noah laughed softly. That answer would shock a lot of people. Maybe. Ethan reached into his pocket and removed a familiar gold ring. The same ring Noah had left behind on a desk many months earlier. There is something I never properly asked. Noah's smile faded into surprise. Ethan held the ring between them. Would you let me start over? Emotion filled Noah's eyes. Not because the past had disappeared. Not because everything was perfect. But because for the first time, Ethan truly understood what mattered. After a long moment, Noah extended his hand. Ethan slipped the ring onto his finger once more. Around them, the waves continued their endless rhythm against the shore. Behind them stood the life they had rebuilt together. Ahead of them waited a future neither had expected to find. This time they walked toward it side by side, and neither of them looked back.